Howdy guys, Attorney Walter Knott, just getting all the video stuff perfect for you guys. Let me pull this forward a little. There you go. Excellent. We're going to go right into the video. We're not going to talk about other stuff. Remember, like, subscribe, leave 5 stars if you like the channel. Here we go. The 5 stars is below in the bio area. Before we go into specifically what essentially is going to be in the infrastructure bill when it comes to disability benefits or the Build Back Better bill, I want to talk to you about the difference between the infrastructure bill and the Biden Build Back Better bill. That way you have an understanding as to what the two types of bills here are. One is passed, the infrastructure bill. One is not passed, being the Build Back Better bill. Specifically, this is from tapinto.net, an article. Let's go into it real quick. It's by Jersey First and published November 20th, 2021. Here we go. There is so much confusion about the recently passed infrastructure bill and Biden's Build Back Better bill. So what's the difference? President Biden's recently signed the $1 trillion Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act into law, which promises to revamp transportation utilities and broadband. The law is being touted as a bipartisan victory, with Mr. Biden pointing to it as proof that Democrats are capable of reaching across the aisle to enact meaningful policy changes. That's where they had a couple of Republicans come over and basically sign on board. Lawmakers have long called for an upgrade of critical infrastructure, and while the bill is not as ambitious as the White House's initial $2.3 trillion proposal, it is significant. It is a significant investment in the utility grid, public transit, and more. There's wide agreement among business interests and outside economists that the law will satisfy. Sorry, my glasses aren't on because they shine weird with the light. The law will satisfy crucial infrastructure needs and could pay dividends in the future. However, there's less certainty regarding the Infrastructure Act's impact on the economy and national debt in the short term, because we've just put $1 trillion on top of our already $30 trillion debt, and we just keep raising the debt ceiling, which devalues the dollar and makes everybody live less of a happy life. The law will commit $550 billion to transportation projects, the utility grid, and broadband. It also invests $110 billion in roads and bridges, along with $65 billion into broadband. The remaining $160 billion will be used to address a variety of pressing concerns, from the replacement of lead pipes to updated public transit. Despite the law's status as President Biden's most concrete policy contribution since the $1.9 trillion coronavirus relief package, growing public concern surrounding the state of the economy could pose a problem as Mr. Biden turns to implement the rest of his sprawling economic agenda. So what they're saying is he passed this bill. It's a lot of money to revamp the U.S., when right now, as we are basically trying to get out of this COVID thing, normally you would not see somebody investing so heavily into our new office, our new America, and the office we're going to have, and the roads to it. That from a business person standpoint would be a financially terminal choice. You would never do that. It was absolutely a terrible idea, but we went forward with it. The crowning jewel of President Biden's agenda, and what they're saying is they spent so much money on this infrastructure bill that now American people are going to be really cranky about him spending even more money now to go into this other bill. Build Back Better, that bill should have come before the infrastructure bill. The crowning jewel of President Biden's agenda is the Build Back Better bill, which is still awaiting a vote in Congress. I think it passed the House. Unlike the bipartisan infrastructure plan, the BBB primarily Build Back Better bill deals in human infrastructure, such as childcare, preschool education, paid parental leave, and elder care. The $1.75 trillion investment in the social safety net and climate policy is expansive. Climate policy, we're going to fix the environment, all while coming out of a recession called the COVID recession, while rebuilding roads to a new office. Isn't this all brilliant? It's all great ideas. It's exactly what we need for investment right now to fix all this, right? Yeah, a little bit of a problem there. While Democrats argue that the BBB's provisions are necessary for the functioning of a modern first world economy, Republicans remain wary. They argue that the bill goes too far in government regulation of the economy and find the hefty price tag difficult to justify. Well, $30 trillion in debt. The Democrat-controlled Senate is anxious to vote. And for most of you guys that don't understand a $30 trillion debt, just search how much does America pay on its monthly to pay for that debt. Who are we paying? How much are we paying? I'll probably do a video on that so you can understand the gravity of how much debt is sitting on the shoulders of every American. The Democrat-controlled Senate is anxious to vote on the Build Back Better bill in coming weeks, and the White House has already mobilized a media campaign to quell inflation concerns. We're in hyperinflation. There's no way that they can quell our concerns. Okay, despite the Democrats' best efforts to convince the American people that the safety net bill will prove beneficial, the BBB continues to face an uphill battle. All right, so that's the difference between the two. Now, every article has a different take specifically on the infrastructure aspects of this thing. So what was argued is the Republicans argued at one point that the infrastructure bill has only 7% of it actually for the infrastructure. And that prior read would make you believe that every cent was going to infrastructure. Let's read this one. This is from CNN Politics, probably a little bit more insightful of a group, specifically for what is actually for infrastructure. And then we'll go into the benefits, specifically for disabled, retired, etc. Does only 7% of Biden's infrastructure plan go toward U.S. infrastructure? A day after Biden's announcement, an email from the Republican National Committee claimed Joe Biden's infrastructure plan is not really about infrastructure. It is another multi-trillion-dollar far-left wish list, echoing similar complaints made about the COVID-19 relief package, the American Rescue Plan. According to the GOP, only 7% of the bill's spending is for what Americans traditionally think of as infrastructure. Conclusion: the GOP claim that just 7% of the bill's spending applies to infrastructure is misleading. That being said, the debate over what technically counts as infrastructure is a real one, and much of the bill's spending falls outside of even the broadest definitions. Okay, Biden's plan includes $621 billion for transportation, $400 billion for home care services, $300 billion for manufacturing, $180 billion for research and development. Under their traditional definition of infrastructure, the GOP email limits what counts as infrastructure spending to include the $150 billion the plan allocates for modernizing highways, roads, main streets, $25 billion to airports, $17 billion for inland waterways, ports, and ferries. However, Biden's plan also calls for $85 billion to modernize public transit, $80 billion for Amtrak, $50 billion for to safeguard critical infrastructure. Let's see what else. Yeah, and then we got $20 billion to improve road safety. Okay, the GOP email does not provide an explanation for why these investments are not considered part of the infrastructure, which is not good. The GOP, Grand Old Party, the Republican Party, should have included some sort of like breakdown as to what each category included, what percentage is going to essentially infrastructure, what's not. We don't have an accounting there. If we include the aforementioned $235 billion additional funding for transportation infrastructure, plus the $126 billion for building housing units, the $112 billion to build public schools and improve community college facilities, and the $111 billion for water infrastructure and $100 billion for digital infrastructure, and the $100 billion for power infrastructure, infrastructure accounts for about 30% of the $2.65 trillion plans announced by the White House. The Republicans could have fairly argued that a majority of the funds aren't going directly to infrastructure projects, but the 7% number relies on the GOP's own narrow definition of infrastructure. Now, this was back when it was a higher amount. Here's kind of the problem we run into. These massive mega bills could be easily passed by the category, meaning we could have had one for, and there's another thing too, like they're talking about here, like, where was it over here? Okay, so for public schools, and okay, so $112 billion to public schools, build public schools and improve community college facilities, $111 billion for water infrastructure. Why couldn't we just split up each one of those into its own category, weigh the merits of that particular bill in its own category, and then pass that specific thing? They don't have to shove all this thing together and have people vote on it, usually with not enough time to review it, usually with, it not being daylight outside. That's the problem we're running into. All right, now let's get into what Biden's Build Back Better framework means for people with disabilities. So the infrastructure bill was not really for the people side of thing in the sense of increasing benefits and doing things along the line of decreasing penalties and increasing financial gains to the general disabled community and retired community. We're going to go through, that's supposed to go through what Biden's Build Back Better framework actually means for people with disabilities. This was published by Philip Powley on October 30th, 2021. This is from the respectabilityreport.org. Okay, the White House outlines framework for the Build Back Better Act, but what does it mean for 56 million Americans with disabilities? Washington, D.C., October 30th. As October slips into November, the White House is working hard with congressional leaders to finalize the details, priorities, and projects to be funded by the forthcoming Build Back Better Act. This is the one that hasn't passed yet. After extensive meetings in recent days, a new framework was announced for the forthcoming legislation. This framework will guide the drafting of legislative language, which means that they don't actually know what's going to be in this thing yet. They basically have a prototype of ideas, general theories, open categories, and they're trying to shove as much in there as they can in a short period of time. This is not how we should be legislating, but you already know that. All right, let's see what we got. When enacted, this framework will set the United States on course to meet its climate goals, which honestly, why do we even care right now when we're in a massive economy problem because of a COVID recession after just coming out of a recession? I mean, climate change is important, but it is not the number one. I mean, let's literally at the top of the list here. That should be at the bottom of the list. Okay, if we don't have people working and paying taxes, then we cannot afford retirement benefits, SSI benefits, SSDI benefits, DAC benefits, veteran affair benefit. We can't afford them if we don't have people working. All right, let's continue. And a lot of people are like, of course we can. Well, if that were true, then we would audit the government and find the money, and that would be accurate. Or we would realize that the literal amount that we use to pay retirement would be reduced to 76, 77% within 10 years down. Like if you get your check, it'll only be 76, 77% of what you would normally get because it's going to run out of the massive amount it needs in 10 years. Yeah, I know. Other channels aren't talking about that. I don't know why. This is something that's on the mind of a lot of people that are in the system, and it's not on the mind of people that are outside of the system, like your LA Lates and stuff like that, where it's like flowers. Although he did have some good video stuff. I saw a little bit, but usually it's a lot of this stuff is like fourth stimulus. When's it coming out? Tomorrow? $2,000 turkey stimulus, so Thanksgiving stimulus. Let's keep reading. This framework has the potential to impact the lives of millions of Americans with disabilities in significant ways through new investments in childcare, healthcare, and education. However, given how much of this bill is up in the air, a critical question needs to be asked. What specific pieces of this framework directly touch on disability issues? The proposed framework is roughly divided into 4 categories of action: investments in the economy, bringing down costs, affordable care, and investments in clean energy. Investments in the economy. If the Build Back Better Act is passed and becomes law, people with disabilities will directly benefit from approximately $150 billion of federal investment in increasing access to home and community-based services. HCBS is a crucial service that supports people with disabilities to live and work in their local communities. Critically, this investment could empower hundreds of thousands of people with disabilities to earn an income without fear of losing their medical benefits. This amount also invests directly in expanding the direct care workforce, which is under significant strain due to the pandemic. As the White House proudly notes, the Build Back Better Act will be the most transformative investment in access to home care in 40 years. That's a good thing. Do we have specifics on what's going to happen? Not at all. Not at all. I keep looking for them. They're starting to dribble out categories that are relevant, the little subcategories of the categories, but that's where we're at. Other investments with direct economic benefit include expanding access to preschool for young children, limitations on child care costs, and an extension of the child tax credit, which has already helped 35 million households, which could help disabled children. Remember, we're adults in this thing. I said it's that only adults can see it because I have a tendency to say words that are, swearing at times. And as a result of that, we have to also think there are a lot of disabled children. Bringing down costs. There are 2 further ways that the proposed elements of the Build Back Better Act would support the aspirations of workers with disabilities. First, the proposal would increase the maximum amount of money that students can receive through the Pell Grant program. This program is one of the most important means whereby students with and without disabilities access money to help pay for college. Likewise, the proposed act would increase investment in community college workforce programs, sector-based training, and apprenticeships that directly train with workers with and without disabilities for the jobs of the future. So basically what they've just said here in this category is that they're going to increase a grant that could potentially have nothing to do with those who are disabled and the benefit to the disabled, but it could benefit somebody that falls into a category that would be allowable in this grant, but it's still open to everybody, right? Everybody that could potentially fit the framework for it. So this is not a disabled specific, and that a lot of this article is like potential here, but a lot of it also is like potential for anybody that are not actually disabled. So I just want to point that out. Likewise, the proposed act would increase investment in community college workforce programs, sector-based training, and apprenticeships that directly train workers with and without disabilities for the jobs of the future. This will require increasing the Labor Department's annual spending on workforce development by 50% for each of the next 5 years. Second, the bill would also extend the expansion of the earned income tax credit, which helped over 17 million workers last year. The EITC is an important tool for helping workers with and without disabilities maximize their earnings. Once again, with and without disabilities. I don't know if you guys have noticed just understanding what's being prepared in this article, but this article is biased, and it's biased in one direction. And the reality here is this. I haven't read anything to you yet, and I just want to pique your ears to this, that said they are going to increase the SSI amount per month. They are going to increase the SSDI amount per month. They're going to increase the disabled vets, the VA benefits amount per month. They're going to increase the return. I haven't said a single thing like that. These are all get people to work more options. Fund the future kids in school options. Right? That's what's basically going on here. But it's not directly, specifically focusing on essentially those things for the disabled individuals. All right? So let's keep rolling through this real quick. Affordable care. The current version of the framework, and sorry, guys, I am home right now because obviously it is the holiday right now, so you might hear people in the background. Affordable care. The current version of the framework would also directly support increased access to healthcare for many Americans by extending the Affordable Care Act premium tax credits through 2025. The framework estimates that 4 million uninsured people would gain coverage. The proposed provisions of the Build Back Better Act would also directly impact the 9 million older Americans with disabilities currently enrolled in Medicare by expanding hearing coverage. That's a good thing. That's a plus benefit for the retired. Investments in clean energy. To the tune of approximately $550 billion, the Build Back Better Act would also significantly invest federal resources. Honestly, guys, think about this. $550 billion. $500 billion. $500 billion. From expanded tax credits, clean energy among utility companies, to investments in mitigating extreme weather events, this bill would change how America powers its homes, businesses, and communities. Guys, honestly, you don't spend $500 billion on clean energy. You keep energy affordable. You don't do the investment like this. This is moronic at an extremely high level. And it's almost like they're trying to sacrifice the country or scuttle it, or I don't care what term you use. It's like they just don't know how to apply their logic here. They're not doing smart things. What does the current version of the Build Back Better Act include? Notably, the framework released this week by the White House is narrower in scope than the grand campaign promises made by candidate Biden. The most significant omission of the new framework is any provision that would directly help workers with and without disabilities to access paid leave. This is a major loss and could directly harm millions of family caregivers who may face choices between earnings and income and helping sick family members. This is particularly disappointing given the inclusion of paid leave supports in several of the stimulus bills passed in 2020. Okay, I mean, that doesn't directly really help the disabled. Doesn't, you know what I mean? It's a little bit, but it's not direct. How are disability organizations reacting to this framework? Organizations eager to see the president deliver on his ambitious agenda were cautiously optimistic following the announcement of the new framework. Let's read that again. That's actually funny. Organizations eager to see the president deliver on his ambitious agenda were cautiously optimistic. Cautiously optimistic because it's crap. This whole bill is crap. They could have done so many things that would have actually, that we would keep the power and lights on, make them cheaper. We would put more money in the pockets directly to the American people. Instead, this is basically trickle-down theory from a Democrat that essentially is all for anti-Republican sentiment. And Republican sentiment is usually trickled down. So I don't even know what the reason is behind this. All right, so let's keep rolling through this, guys. Here we go. In a public statement on the issue, Donna Meltzer, CEO of the National Association of Councils on Development Disabilities, noted that expanded HCPS funding would help realize the ADA promise of community integration for people with disabilities. Meltzer also went on to say that the Build Back Better framework announced by the president today lays out how Congress can finally deliver for people with disabilities so they can live independently. Congress must seize the opportunity to follow the framework contained in President Biden's framework to advance access to independent living for people with disabilities. Likewise, the ARC of the United States also noted disappointment about the lack of paid leave provisions and called on advocates to continue pushing for more investments. The pandemic highlighted for everyone how crucial paid leave is for people with disabilities and their families. Leaving out paid leave is unacceptable. and Congress should include paid leave in this package, said Peter Burns, the CEO of the ARC. Burns went on to also say that proposal is a huge down payment on investing in the futures of people with disabilities. It's not. It's not. And their families. It's a cute, sad little attempt. It is not even close to what we were expecting. It will expand access to services for people with disabilities on waiting lists to start addressing the direct care workforce crisis, including raising wages and creating more jobs. Here's the problem. Yeah, and I see critical thinking. They want to get rid of nuclear energy, which is the best way to produce energy. The best way to produce energy is a fusion, which is a form of nuclear-based energy, which they're getting closer to, CERN Labs, all these things, which would give us unlimited power forever. But we're not funding that. We're funding other types of green energy, which are useless compared to that. But hey, everybody voted for this guy. So would you like to learn more? All right, so that's a fact sheet, yada yada. Look, I'm not happy because I expected them to actually be mentally competent enough as a White House association, organization, a group to go forward and basically create a bill that would directly pay funds to those individuals who are essentially in need on a monthly basis. Increase SSI benefits, increase disability benefits, increase retirement benefits, increase VA benefits. I thought we were going to see that. I thought we were going to see direct, specific things from the SSI Restoration Act, the Social Security Administration, the Social Security 2100 Act. Instead, we don't. We don't see those things at all. So I'm cranky about it. I'm not happy because he made all these promises in his presidential, website. And what I'm seeing as a result of that is not only a clear, definitive plan, but also a plan that quasi from the side, looking at it from an angle, might help the disabled a little bit. Anyways, guys, I hope you have an absolutely wonderful day. I'm going to catch you a little bit later, and we'll go from there. Thank you so much. I see some of the usual people on here. I always love to see that. Critical Thinker, Moon, Peach, Psychic Outlaw channel, who's been with me for a really long time, so I always appreciate that. Quaalude Charlie, I see you right there. Have a wonderful night, guys. I'll catch you a little bit later. Thanks so much. Bye-bye.